darning today. So I absolutely love darning because I just feel like it's such a good way to preserve things in a really creative way. And I've got loads of different darning tools as well. So I've got like these lovely melamine ones. I'm just going to move this out of my head. There we go. And these are gorgeous and they've got space in them to store needles. And I think these are made from bits of recycled plastic as well, which makes them even nicer. And I've got, which is this one? I've got a couple of these things called Darnalites. If I can get this out. So these are from the 40s. The darning in blackouts, it's got a little light in it. So I've got 3 of these. They come in pink, yellow, and green. And the green one should light up. Maybe not. There we go. So you can do all of your darning and you make do and mending, even when it's dark. But the annoying thing is I over tightened this one recently and I broke it, which is a bit frustrating. And you may well have had a darning mushroom in your family at some point. So I've got my great granddad somewhere. I'm just going through my big basket next to me of all of the different darning mushrooms. And this one, when you open it, it's got a little thread spool in it. Quite hard to, actually, maybe I won't open that. I think it might be that end instead. I'm not sure, but either way, it doesn't feel like it wants to open. And I've got a few darning macaroons as well. So those, rather than something to hold on to at the bottom, they just have bits around them. So this one's had a life. It's been chewed, I think, at some point. And this is part of a speed weave. So this one was donated to Thread Republic, and I was just amazed. Someone didn't know what they were donating. And this is basically a darning loom. So I've got a modern darning loom over here. This one is on loan at the moment. It's part of something called a mending migration. So these are made by someone called Alyssa, who runs a company called Worth Mending. She's based in Canada and she sends these all over the world. So this one's on its UK leg of its tour at the moment. So I have to send it back fairly soon. So I just thought I'd include this. And I'll show you how those work as well. But this is kind of the vintage and the more modern version. Sorry, I think this has stopped on here. There we go. Sorry about that. And I've got the vintage packaging for this as well, which is lovely. And then this is a dagger darner, which is similar. And it's got these nice little grooves. And it's got this thing where you twist it and it changes which bits are waxed. Sorry about that. And this has got some really lovely bits to it as well. So it's got the original instructions. It's just gorgeous. And another speed weave. So I've got a big basket next to me of all of the exciting things. So there's a few more bits in there as well. But maybe I'll leave those for now. And I'll show you how to actually do some darning rather than just showing you my collection of darning mushrooms. So I've got some sheets that I've printed out. This shows you some nice basics of visible mending. So we'll go on to Scotch darning and Swiss darning next week, but we're going to focus this week on classic darning. So with that, you can either do it like this, where you do lots of little stitches in a circle. So you do a circle first to create your outline, and then lots of stitches going along like that. And then when you get to the middle, you jump over it and jump back like that. So I'll show you how to do this soon. But the reason for this is that this reinforces it. So when I'm doing this kind of darning, it's lovely, but it's basically creating a patch. So it's not reinforcing all of the areas around it, whereas this will really strengthen everything nearby. And we're basically going to do a bit of weaving as well. So it's really satisfying. And there's another diagram here because you can do it in a square as well. So you do all of your running stitches that way and then go across in the other direction. Although normally I would do more that way as well. So I'll find a sock and we'll get started on that. Oh yeah, there's a diagram as well for how to use a vintage speed weave. So I'll leave that out while I find a sock to darn. There's as well next to me, there are all of my socks ready to go. Got one here that I don't know why I've put it in here because I can't actually see a hole in it. We'll find one that does actually have a hole. I should have done a one I prepared earlier type thing. So when you're darning things, you want to make sure that the darning mushroom you're using or the object that you're using to darn matches the area of whatever you're mending. So you wouldn't use something like one of these really, really curved ones or something like this on a flat part of a sock, because then it's going to give it a curve that you don't need. Equally, you want something, because this is quite a big space, you want something that's got quite a lot of volume to it. So if you're doing it on jeans as well, you wouldn't use a curve because you can do this on any type of fabric. But I'm going to use this, or I could use one of the little macaroons as well. They're quite nice. In fact, let's go for this one. So I'm going to take, this has the nice metal spring, but you could use a hairband, bit of elastic, anything you like. And when you put it on, you want to make sure that you're not stretching it really, really tight, because if you stretch it tight, it's just going to warp it. So you want it to be flat, but not stretched. So then I'm going to put this on here. And then sometimes it moves a little bit, so you have to make sure it's in the right area. So about there is going to be right. And you can use anything to darn it, really. So I think I'm going to do a kind of square darn on this one. And this area, there isn't any real holes. It's just going a bit threadbare. So I'm just going to have a sip of my drink. And thread-wise, so I use, my favourite is these Appleton crewel wools, because I think they're just, with them being pure wool, when you've done a fair bit of it, when you put them in the wash, it kind of felts together and you get this really nice kind of like squishy woolen sock. But you can use all sorts. You can buy proper darning wools. I quite like these. And you can get them in some really lovely colours as well. So I've got quite a neon selection just here. It's not as messy as it looks, I don't think. So for darning, you can get darning needles, but if I'm honest, I just use whatever. And I quite like using doll making or teddy bear making needles if I'm going across a really large bit. But this is for the small bits here. So I'm going to thread my needle up, folding it back on itself like that. And then putting it over the top, like that sort of thing. And then at the other end, I'm going to do a little knot. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to make sure I start, in fact, I'll start down here. So it won't be exactly a square. But towards the edge of the damage, so that I'm working through a more solid bit, I'm going to do a little running stitch. So if I had a longer needle, I could go along the whole thing here. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Maybe I should have used a more contrasting one, but it will be more obvious in a little bit. Then we'll go up along here. You want to get all the way up to that green bit. And you can, if you want, draw a border around it in in a fabric pen, but you don't have to. And we're going to go across there. And depending on how big the material that the sock is made out of is, you can gauge how much of a hole you want to leave. So this is a normal standard sock, so it's quite small fibres. Whereas if it was a knitted sock, you could get away with using a much thicker yarn for it. Sorry about that. We're going to keep going along there. So it's basically just little running seed stitches. So if you watched last week's session, where I mentioned just a running stitch and a seed stitch, then you should know where we're at. So when I get to the bits here where it's a bit more threadbare, I won't stitch into those bits, I'll jump over them. So if you're working on denim, I would probably use embroidery thread for this. I think that works really nicely and you get a good bold look to it. And it's hard to find the history of darning, but there's a few different things where you can see it in historical documents, like in illuminated manuscripts. There's some bits where it's been fixed with what looks like a Scotch darn, which we'll do next week, which is probably my favourite darning technique. And it's just lovely that that can go back so far. So see how I've jumped over that section. I'm going to go across. So if there was a hole, it would be really, really clear cut on what you're jumping over. But on this, I'm just going to jump over the threadbare sections. Okay, taking that off screen right now. So one thing that darning does require is patience. Definitely a slow craft, and I find it really relaxing. And like these socks, I absolutely love them. They're by Donna Wilson, who I think is amazing. She's a real supporter of independent craft and British design and making sure that things are made sustainably. So when someone has those ethics, I don't want to just throw away something that I bought from them. And I don't particularly like throwing things away anyway. I think things can always have a new life. And you can do this where you change colour halfway through as well. I quite like doing it where, so with it being like weaving, so we have the warp and the weft threads, and you remember which ones the weft threads are because they go right to left. So we're making the warp now, and the warp is the supporting section. But I quite like having different colour warp threads. But I cut off a really big piece here, so I might just stick with this. And you can probably see that growing now. So we've got that nice big section. And when I get to the end, I will change colour so that you can see the contrast. I often find when you do socks as well, it puckers up around here. Try and not pull it too close. The best thing is if you're watching this back afterwards and you want to speed the process along, you can just move along the video a little bit. You don't have to watch me do all of this. But I think it's good to do it in real time. It starts to feel really nice and tactile at this point as well. I always end up moving it around a lot as well. And it doesn't have to be a clean cut space. Like not all of these lines have to be the same length. I think it's more important to have those supporting stitches around the edge. So we've got kind of to the end of the threadbare bit. I'm just going to do a load of little stitches along there. Then I'll go back. So we're going to start right at the bottom and work our way up. So a little run of running stitches along the bottom here just to help reinforce it, which in this picture it doesn't do, but I think it's better for it in the long term. Just a little row of running stitches there, then up, same again. Then when it gets to this one, actually we'll do one more row of stitching along the bottom. It's not quite even yet. The best thing is the more stitches you do, the more it reinforces it, the stronger your sock will be and the longer it will last. So then when I get to this bit, I'm going to use the blunt end of the needle, because if you use the pointy end, even though this isn't that pointy, it's going to get stuck in those strands. So then you just weave under and over, like that, and then a few more little stitches at the other end to secure it. And then you go back and you alternate the way that you weave it. Then when you get to the end of that bit, a few more little stitches right to the end there. So then same again, alternate along. And sometimes you'll get ones like this one at the end that will get a little bit baggy. That's okay. And sometimes little sections raise up like that, but they'll all kind of blend together after a while. And you have to try and make sure that when bits like this go a bit baggy, that they don't swap over places. Like we want that one to go back over here. And we're getting somewhere. The hole is, say, about a third full now. It just becomes very relaxing as you get in the zone with it, which is why I'm probably not that chatty. And you can do different kinds of weaving on it as well if you want to get fancy. But I just do a kind of plain weave. And if you get some strands doing what these are doing, you can sneakily on the next one stitch underneath one of them and stitch underneath the next when you've got a threadbare bit like that. And that should help keep them in place. They'll still be a little bit baggy, but it means they shouldn't move about too much. And we're getting there, it's filling in. So as those bits underneath wear away even more, this bit will remain. And then I love when you've got socks that you've darned that end up with darns upon darns upon darns and it becomes a whole different sock. just think there's something really nice about it. I might swap to a bigger needle now. I've got some big doll's needles here. Oh. Oh, sorry, someone is at the door. I'll just be one. And sorted, we're back. So I've got my much bigger needle here, just going to make going across here a lot easier. So again, I'm going to fold this across, thread it up like that. And then again, going to use the blunt end. And with this, I'll be able to get a lot further across. I'll be able to force it all down like that. It'll just be a lot neater. Then we'll grab another colour in a moment. So I'm going to do the last few stitches on this side. And then I'm going to sort of weave it under here so it blends in. And I can trim down that bit later. I'm going to grab a different colour, I think a nice pink, a nice neon. I'm going to put another little knot at the end. I'm going to come underneath this bit and do some stitches this way so that the knot eventually gets hidden under the next bit. Where have I put my scissors? There they are. Then same thing, just a different colour. But we're getting close to the end of that. And it's getting to the point where on this side here, we're done with the strands. So now the bit that we need to weave gets a little bit smaller. And it'll be just stitches the other side. And that little knot, even though it's become visible, after I've worn the socks a few times, it won't be. It will just kind of blend in. And I try and alternate where my stitches go a little bit, so you don't get kind of a raised ridge of stitches. So they should kind of be slightly stacked and staggered. It's really nice and tactile. At this point, it can get tricky because those strands are going to want to move about. But you just have to fit a few more in so that it doesn't change the consistency of being really, really tight there and really loose up here. Then after we've done all of the weaving, it's just a few more little running stitches up the top, and then that's done. I've always wondered how long it takes me to do this kind of weaving. So I guess it's about 40 minutes. And it's important that you do this row as well because it needs that little bit of reinforcement on each side. But I'll take it off the thing and show you it from the other side. So when you're choosing your thread as well, just match it to whatever it is that you're stitching. So whatever the weight of the fabric is. So then I'm going to use this bit here to loop. I'll do a little stitch there. But come up under that one. I'm just going to loop under this and tie that in a little knot. And then I'll stitch underneath there. I'm going to come out through that other knot. So they're both in the same place, which you don't have to do. And then we've got our mended sock. So there we go. This is the other one of the same pair. So this, the way I've been doing this, it's on a darning loom instead. So these, and I've got a load of different ones. It's similar to the vintage ones I was showing you earlier. So closer to this. But it basically makes a tiny loom. And this one's quite a big one. So we've got a few minutes for me to show you this. I've done most of this one. There's lots of little loose ends, so if I trim those off. So this is a bit of darning that I did before. So now I'm just darning around it. So when you move these, it changes which of the strands are lifted. So then you can just go through the top like that, push it down, do a few little stitches on the other side. Move it across like that. It changes which ones are lifted up. And then same thing again. So with this one, you do a little stitch at the bottom, wrap it around one of the spokes, and then go back down and do another little stitch and keep doing that. I'm going to do a few more bits on this and then join them together. And you can get some of these for like less than a tenner. This one is more expensive, but I will say for it, it is a lot better. The cheaper ones that you can get tend to be quite aggravating. I've done quite a few workshops where we just use those and they jump off the little wooden bit all the time. So you're left with all of these little strands that it's kind of hard to do anything with. So I do recommend this one. And I'll show you all of the bits that it comes with. And it does speed it up, but because it doesn't have much stitching around the edges, it's not as strong a mend. So here, because there's this little gap up here, I'm just doing extra stitches between to reinforce. So I'm going to join these two up. So it does get harder as you get to the top because there's not much room. So you often end up with quite a baggy bit at the top there and bits going over the spokes. So the nice thing with this is all of the wood is made from reclaimed wood on this one. And the spokes are made, these bits are made from old bicycle spokes, I believe. So I just need to do a few more on this side. I think that side's finished. That's quite a bit higher up than this one. So you can probably sort of see how that started to like felt together a little bit. The older bit of darning in the middle. So then the trickiest bit with this is taking it off the loom because it always looks a little bit kind of off when you do it. So you kind of have to pull it back like that so it comes down. And then you're left with all of these little loops at the top. And you have to stitch all of those in. And to be honest, I always find it looks quite messy. And you can help that out by kind of moving these bits up a little bit. But it's hard to get the warp tight enough on it. Hard to get the weft even to make it look neat. But over time, it does kind of adjust itself and move around. And you can always do another row of stitches through it afterwards. But I tend to just leave it. Oh no, gone around my cable for my phone. I'm just going to do a little running stitch along the whole top of that just to help it integrate. And it does get harder at this point because you don't have the structure of the frame. So it's quite malleable. I'm going to put that underneath here, cut it off. And I'll show you what that looks like from the inside because that's quite satisfying. All right, it's a bit too threadbare to see it, but if there's an actual hole, you can often see all of the weaving from the other side. Just very, very nice. So we have got a pair of socks mended in two different ways. And I'll show you while we've got a bit of time. So this Swift darner comes with lots of lovely, lovely things. And I might have put this on yesterday's as well. Not yesterday's, last week's. But it comes in this beautiful reusable jiffy bag. Anyone can apply to host this for a while. So if you're interested in having a go with this and looking after it for a while, go on to the Worth Mending website and you can apply to be a part of it. There's a much bigger bed to it. So if you are mending like a whole massive rip on a jumper, you could use that. And you can also use that just for kind of like some darning as well. Not darning, some weaving. It also comes with this really lovely little passport for everyone that's had it so far. So I still need to write in this before it moves on. It's really sweet. And a few other bits as well. So it's got a little like how to darn a whole book. So it tells you all about it. And there's a few lovely bits in here as well, like a little weft pick. So a weft pick, basically for when you're doing all of your weaving, if it's a bit gappy, you can use this to like move it down. So that's been really, really useful. And I think that might be about time. So join us next week for a session on Scotch and Swiss darning. Not going to lie, I absolutely cannot stand Swiss darning, but we'll give it a go. We'll learn together. And if it goes wrong, it'll just be a whole session on Scotch darning, which is my absolute favourite, and you can make it really, really decorative. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope to see you again. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.